Hi everyone, I'm Spiro, back with another update concerning the coronavirus outbreak. In my recent report, we took an inside look at Event 201, which was a pandemic exercise that simulated a coronavirus outbreak which killed 65 million people. The simulation took place shortly before the actual coronavirus outbreak had occurred. Now, in this report, I covered how Section 4 of the simulation was perhaps the most shocking, as the participants of the exercise, which included representatives from the United Nations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the media, vaccine manufacturers, major banks, and the Chinese and American CDC, just to name a few, discussed how it was critically important to control news and information, especially on social media. Now, one of the members, who works for the Monetary Authority of Singapore, even suggested it's time for governments to jail those who post fake news.
But one thing we haven't spoken about, and I'm wondering whether it's time to talk about this, is a step up from the part of the governments on enforcement actions against fake news, right? Some of us, these are new regulations that come in place about how we deal with fake news. And maybe this is a time for us to showcase some cases where we are able to bring forward some bad actors and leave it before the courts to decide whether they have actually spread some fake news.
Now, what is fake news? And who decides what the facts are? And who fact-checks the fact-checkers? Now, another member of the simulation panel, who is the Global Chief Operating Officer of Edelman, suggested that social media companies themselves need to be the arbiters of truth.
We're at a moment where the social media platforms have to step forward and recognize the moment to assert that they're a technology platform and not a broadcaster is over. They, in fact, have to be a participant in broadcasting accurate information and partnering with the scientific and health communities to counterweight, if not flood the zone of accurate information, because to put the genie back in the bottle of the misinformation and disinformation is nigh impossible.
The Event 201 panel also agreed that there needed to be a centralized source of information, which would disseminate the official story, in essence becoming the Ministry of Truth. Now, the panel decided that the World Health Organization would be most suitable for this task. Now, Event 201 even created fake news reports as part of their exercise, talking about how fake news threatened governments and how social media companies were removing content and how some governments were even shutting down the internet entirely.
Countries are reacting in different ways as to how best to manage the overwhelming amounts of dis and misinformation circulating over the internet. In some cases, limited internet shutdowns are being implemented to quell panic.
Now, just as the simulation itself seems to eerily predict the coronavirus outbreak, we're beginning to see other scenarios in the simulation come to fruition, such as travel bans, a negative impact on the economy, as well as censorship, as Facebook, Twitter, and Google, which owns YouTube, have all vowed to stop, quote, misinformation. Now, let's take a quick moment to compare some news reports. Let's start with one from the simulation.
Alarming news emerging from social media companies today about the CAPS pandemic. Twitter and Facebook are reporting they've identified and deleted a disturbing number of accounts dedicated to spreading disinformation about the outbreak.
And now let's hear one from the real world.
As we continue to monitor the deadly coronavirus outbreak, social media accounts are also spreading misinformation about the deadly virus.
As Axios reports, tech platforms including Facebook, Twitter, and Google are now racing to contain false information, much of which violates their content policies.
Do we really want social media companies deciding for us what is and what is not misinformation? Can't we, the people, discern truth from non-truth for ourselves? Shouldn't we have that choice? I see this as nothing more than a move to censor and control the narrative as part of the information war. Just last night, Zero Hedge had their Twitter account permanently banned from the social media platform. Many speculate that this was due to Zero Hedge's coverage of the coronavirus outbreak, which often countered the mainstream narrative. Now, just before Zero Hedge was banned, they published a controversial article suggesting that the coronavirus contained HIV insertions, implying that the virus was man-made or had been altered in some way, stoking fears that the virus was actually a bioweapon. Shortly after Zero Hedge was banned, they published an article disclosing why they believe that they were banned from Twitter. A writer from BuzzFeed filed a complaint with Twitter against Zero Hedge and wrote an article claiming that Zero Hedge had doxed a Chinese scientist and falsely accused him of creating the coronavirus as a bioweapon. So, according to Zero Hedge, they were banned for what Twitter deemed as harassment for publishing the scientist's name and contact information, despite the fact that the scientist's information was already publicly available. I encourage everyone on Twitter to message Twitter support and Jack, who is the CEO or owner of Twitter, and demand that they immediately reinstate Zero Hedge's Twitter account, or you can retweet my message to them. Now, censorship is not the answer. In my opinion, we need all the information we can get our hands on so we can determine for ourselves what is actually taking place. We cannot simply rely on social media companies, the governments, or the corporate media and their controllers, or even the UN and the World Health Organization to decide what the truth is for us. Now, be sure to follow me on Twitter and also other platforms which do not censor content, such as BitChute, where I post all of my reports, and Gab. I'll post links in the comments below. Stay tuned for more. I'm Spiro.